At the turn of the century, small towns all over the Midwestern states started building large theaters that would go on to be cornerstones of their communities. These ornate palaces were not just a venue for entertainment, but a source of pride for small-town America, and Goshen, Indiana was no exception.
Indiana has many splendid cities, many splendid communities, and many splendid buildings, but no city the size of Goshen has so splendid a playhouse. Former Indiana Governor James F. Hanley, 1906.
Just to the east of South Bend sits Goshen. Settled in 1841, Goshen was named after the Old Testament reference to the place the Hebrews dwelt in Egypt. In contrast to its traditionally conservative and religious background, Goshen had 5 theaters in the early 1900s. For a small town, Goshen had a big appetite for arts and culture. The Goshen Theater was fed a constant stream of performers by its proximity to one of the nation's major railroad lines. This brought acts and talent through the Midwestern town on their way to and from Chicago.
Come out of New York, was going to Chicago. It was sort of the halfway point, and they had no problem getting entertainment here.
The theater was built in 1905 originally, and it burned down in 1906. There was a furniture store next door, and somebody took a candle downstairs, and then it was rebuilt in 1907.
110 years later, the Goshen Theater is the only one of these once great palaces to survive. In the last century, the Goshen Theater has served its community in a variety of ways. It has been a playhouse, a movie theater, a church, and even a roller rink. The curse of time, a blight that has left many of these 20th century theaters in ruins, now shows on the Goshen Theater. The community seeks to bring the splendid playhouse back to its former glory in an effort to restore Goshen's home for the performing arts. In 1905, a Chicago theater architect, Colonel J.M. Wood, was hired to design the theater at a cost of around $75,000. Near the end of its construction, the theater was named in honor of Joseph Jefferson, an American actor who had died earlier that same year.
The builders of the new theater in Goshen have decided to call the house the Jefferson Theater. This will be the first city in the country to pay such a tribute to the memory of the dead actor since he passed away. The Bristol Banner, 1905.
Daniel Sanders, he was a businessman and he was pretty rich for the time period. He owned a sawmill here in Goshen with some other investors, and he thought it was time that Goshen had a playhouse. They raised money to have that theater built.
The theater was successful in its first year of operation. The opening night alone took nearly an hour to fill the 1,200-seat space, nearly 5 times the average modern movie theater capacity.
In November 1906, they had a fire that started in the basement, and it destroyed the whole building. And you had fire departments from Elkhart even come over to help put that fire out.
The aftermath of the fire left the Goshen community devastated. The Goshen News-Times reported,
"The handsome new Jefferson Theater block, yesterday one of the main sources of pride for the city, and the quarters of prominent mercantile and amusement features of Goshen, is today a smoldering mass of ruins." The Goshen News-Times, 1906.
In 1905, this building was originally constructed, and in 1906 it burned to the ground. And in 1907, it reopened, and it reopened because the community was willing to rally around it and support it and make sure that it happened.
Almost immediately after the first beautiful Jefferson burned on December 18, 1906, in one of Goshen's biggest fires, plans began for the second Jefferson. The Goshen News, 1971.
Private investors raised nearly $40,000 to restore the Jefferson, and its rapid reconstruction allowed the theater to reopen in October of 1907. As motion pictures rapidly became more popular in the 1940s, most theaters traded their performance theater layouts for a more elaborate movie palace design. Theater owners created European and Renaissance-inspired architecture to attract these new moviegoers. Each theater tried to be more ornate than the next.
For the first 40 years, it served as a vaudeville touring house. Then in 1948, there was a major renovation, and it was turned into a movie palace, and then was showing first-run films.
They could shoot us if we tried to rush them. We'll have to use strategy. Attract their attention and make them follow you.
In 1948, they put in new seats on the front of the marquee out. When they changed from the square to more of the triangle, they found out Jefferson's name wasn't set on the front, and that's when they changed it to Goshen Theater.
Over 100 years of structural upgrading and adaptation to the ever-changing technical advancements of the entertainment industry have challenged the theater and its competitors. The city of Goshen had multiple theaters located in its downtown. However, the only true rival of the Jefferson was the Lincoln Theater, built in 1920. The competition did not last long, however, as the Lincoln was quickly purchased and run by the same management.
When you got more than one theater in town, they bid on movies. You know, the Goshen Theater had most of the A movies, if you want to call them that, because they would outbid the Lincoln Theater, and the Lincoln Theater then would show more of your B movies.
We busted an axle. Uh-oh, there's the limited. We've got to stop her.
During the 1920s and 1930s, film features would often run several hours. Before the feature film, several short films would play, and then the previews for upcoming features would also be shown.
Camera headlines from the news of the day.
Starting in the 1940s, newsreels were added to the beginning of a feature showing. This was a platform commonly used to report wartime efforts. These lengthy viewings were cut down significantly over time, and by the 1960s were similar to the runtime of modern-day showings.
I worked at the candy counter, made the popcorn, stocked the candy, and that's what I did.
And I was the head usher. Of course, I was the only usher, but it was more like the assistant manager. I changed the marquee, I carried the film up and down 3 flights of stairs, you name it, I did it. You know, I had to go down into the sub-basement, which is out underneath the sidewalk out in the street, and fire up an old single burner gas ring and take a 5-gallon bucket of hard popcorn oil that was solid, and then set it on the burner and wait for it to get enough liquid that I could pour it off and bring it up to her so that she could make popcorn. Another one of my duties was to go around and put movie posters in all the store windows up and down Main Street. And for each business that allowed me to put a movie poster in their window, I gave them 2 free passes to the theater. And I had this great big, huge, thick pad of free passes. I had lots of friends in high school.
There's so many interesting, quirky things that have been really fun to discover. Even discovering like how to change the light bulb in the main theater space by crawling up above the ceiling and pulling the light bulb up through a little hole in the ceiling and changing it, and you pop it back down again. So little things like that have just been really interesting.
If you sat up at the front row in the balcony, anybody that goes up there will notice that there's spikes at the front of the balcony. Those are to keep kids from climbing up on there and then falling off and landing on people down below. But that didn't stop kids from throwing popcorn down on the people. Occasionally you'd have some kid would throw a soft drink over the edge. You know, that was kind of stupid. My brother and I started coming to the theater when we were probably about 6 or 7 years old. And they always had ushers at the entrances to the balcony. And if we could manage to distract one, and several of us would sneak upstairs and watch movies by ourselves up there in the balcony. You really felt like you were really up high. But being older now and bigger, you know, it doesn't look so high anymore, but it is still pretty high.
We wasn't allowed to go to the shows when we was in school. But after I graduated from Goshen High School, started going on weekends, going to different shows, movies. And it was a place to have fun with your friends and all that.
They had the movies for the children. I used to come to Friday night Fright Fest, and they would have for teenage kids, you know. And it was just a clean, wholesome fun. And there was always something interesting.
But I can remember coming here as a child and watching the creature feature movie, and it was called The Blob.
Every one of you watching this screen, look out.
And it starred Steve McQueen in his first starring role. And the movie starts off with the Blob invading a movie theater, and the Blob comes out through the hole in the projection booth and comes down into the audience and starts eating people. And that was scary. That was real scary.
There was a movie called The Tingler. You look at the movies back then, they were the most hokey movies. Basically what it was, Vincent Price was a doctor, and he had somehow removed a backbone out of some convict that had killed people. And somehow or another that backbone came to life and during the night and was going around killing people. They had apparatuses hooked up to the floor in the theater so that when this thing was going along in this gymnasium attacking people, they'd vibrate the floors and everybody'd start screaming.
Well, what I seen was John Wayne Westerns, a good share of them. I remember seeing Elvis Presley, Jailhouse Rock there. That's probably one of the first movies I seen.
Baby, I don't care.
The Goshen Theater showed movies all throughout the week, from horror, comedy, romance, and even Saturday morning cartoons.
Up in the sky, look! It's a bird! It's a plane! It's Superman!
And Saturday mornings, they had the cartoon for the children in the summer, and we were mobbed. It was so busy, but it was a lot of fun.
Hold it, Chester. Hold it. Let go of me! Let go of me!
There was a guy in town, and he would come in to the Saturday morning matinees, the Westerns, and he actually would have cap gun pistols. And I mean, this is a man that was in his 20s and 30s. And when the big fight scene started, he would stand up and start firing these cap guns at the people on the screen, and they called him Two Gun, because that's what he did. He always had his two guns, and he'd fight right with Hopalong Cassidy and Lone Ranger.
The three-story theater, reaching nearly half a block, rented out space to numerous organizations throughout the years. The Goshen Theater was not just a movie palace, it was a community center. For decades, the building's multi-purpose nature saved it from the same fate of many of Goshen's older theaters.
Second floor used to be CPAs, lawyers, and dentists. And they would rent space up here on the second floor. And of course, the third floor, before our time, when our parents were kids, they would come skating. They had roller skating on the third floor.
One other thing that's different in the building today is that there used to be an orchestra pit, and now they've covered that over. But other things seem to be the same. The old dressing rooms, the bathrooms.
There were numerous bands that were in here back in the 80s before it became a church. Quiet Riot was here, I believe. Blue Oyster Cult was here. I wish I had memories of those. I didn't attend them. I do remember when I was, before we bought the theater in the mid-2000s, the church that owned it would, during one of the World Cup series, I believe it was 02 or 06, they actually opened the theater, and for $1 you could come in and watch the World Cup games on the big screen, and they would sell popcorn. So I thought that was a really cool thing that they did just for a community event.
We had a local church, local coffee shop owner, Myron Bontreger, was the minister, and they're a big reason why this building's still here and in the shape that it is in.
Sneaking candy into the theater was a long-standing modern tradition, but the introduction of popcorn concessions was a concept only adopted by the theater in the 1930s. Candy concessions were not added until after World War II due to a sugar ration throughout the early 40s. This sugar prohibition made the candy comeback even stronger for theaters after the war. In the late 40s, candy concessions were reintroduced to the snack counter, boosting profit significantly despite a decline in theater attendance.
The movies were free. That tells you how much business they did at the concession stand, because all the profit was from the concession. The movies was just to draw the kids in, and candy was where the money was made.
Good and Plenty's and Milk Duds and, your typical theater snacks and candy. Remember that counter quite well. Our parents would send us to the movie while they went out on a Saturday night, and when the movie was over, they'd come pick us up. But this was a safe haven. This was a place where they didn't feel afraid of leaving us.
They knew that it was a safe place, and they would drop them off at the door, pick them up when the movie was over. They knew the times, and so there was no worry back in our day.
It was a different time back then. It was in the 60s, and there was no crime. There were no drugs per se, and it was a different time, and it was a good time.
Structural aging left many 20th century movie palaces to decay. Interiors lined with velvet began to mold, pillars hand-carved and varnished in gold chipped away, and floors became warped by leaking roofs that were left unattended. Many of these theaters have become neglected as communities turn their attention toward the modern conveniences of multiplexes, which house anywhere from 12 to 20 screens, featuring first-run films. Due to the cost-intensive restoration needs, historic movie houses are sometimes repurposed into gyms or offices, but more often they're destroyed to make space for new buildings or even parking lots. By the 1980s, building decay, lack of attendance, and the growing popularity of TV factored into the closure of many historic movie palaces. The slow march of time was also taking its toll on the Goshen Theater as it struggled to remain profitable and open in the mid-80s.
The Goshen Theater has reopened and will continue to operate under receivership for another 4 to 6 months. Predicting its future beyond that point is more difficult. The Goshen News, 1986.
Why the theater actually closed, I think it was getting run down. It needed painting, and seat cushions were torn and needed replacements, and I think that was part of the downfall of the theater.
In 1986, the owners of the Goshen Theater recognized the need for major restoration. An estimated investment of $100,000 to repair the roof, carpet, paint, and sound system left the owners to question whether a small-town theater could generate enough activity to make such an investment justified. Along with significant structural neglect, theater attendance declined drastically in the 80s. Then-owner Dave Wright claimed that television played a large role in this decline, keeping viewers at home in the evenings rather than at the theater.
Serials and cartoons don't pay off because kids can sit in front of the TV all day for that. Former theater manager David Wright, 1987.
In December of '97, we bought this building. After we started working on this building, other people started working on their buildings. And I think people just took more pride in downtown.
Since 1986, our downtown experienced significant decline. Now, we've seen significant reinvestment in the downtown community, but the Goshen Theater has really lagged behind.
Over the last 10-15 years, downtown Goshen has really seen a boost in not only the renovations that have happened down here, but the types of businesses that we have. And I completely believe that that's due to the type of community we live in. We've got box stores at both ends of our downtown, and most communities would not survive through that. But Goshen has a community that is very interested in supporting local businesses and also volunteering.
In 2009, a group of concerned stakeholders got together because we recognized that one of the largest facilities in our downtown district was really at incredible risk of ruin. And that building is the Goshen Theater. And that group of stakeholders felt like, a facility this large with this much historical and social value and potential economic value really needed some time and attention.
The Goshen Theater building is actually one of the last pieces to be developed in downtown Goshen. Quite often these are the first pieces in downtowns to be developed. We're very fortunate that this is our last main piece.
I think it can be the kind of center that just draws a lot of people into downtown in a way that just individual restaurants can't do.
Unfortunately, we're that neighbor who hasn't mowed their lawn for like 10 years. And, we feel that we don't want to be that obnoxious neighbor who hasn't taken care of their property. We want to make sure that we use the theater to help bolster the other projects that have already received significant investment and make sure that it's a contributor and not a detraction from the downtown.
I've been on the board, the theater board, for 5 years now. We purchased the theater in 2014, and since then I have been basically acting as a facilities manager, technical director, essentially learning the building, learning what it was we bought.
We commissioned a feasibility study that was conducted in 2012, and the study looked at everything from architectural review, engineering study, all the technical needs of the theater, as well as whether or not there was a viable business plan, whether there was a market for a theater of this size in our community. And the feasibility study came back and said, yes, that the building had great infrastructure even after being in existence more than 100 years, and that there was a market for exactly this size theater, given the other theaters that are currently in existence and operation in Elkhart County.
Since we have the Linway theaters now, they could make this a really elegant place for events to happen. So I can't wait to see that.
This is a pretty large building. It covers a whole half block. And I guess they got plans for utilizing the second and third floors for a ballroom and a big grand entry staircase. And I'm looking forward to it. I want to see it when it's done.
There are several concepts for what the renovations will entail, and I think a lot of it depends on how the fundraising goes. I think what's really helped us is the events that we've had so far and getting lots of traffic in here and lots of people aware of the possibilities here. We've had people just tossing change and dollar bills into our donation bucket, so lots of little donations. I think that speaks really highly to the support.
Having events like First Fridays when they utilize the theater or the Riverbend Film Festival when they've utilized it, it really helps to bring the community back into it, to have some of that ownership bought back into it, and make everybody remember that this is our local theater and this is our historic theater.
We intend to keep the theater as close to the original as we can. Obviously, for doing some of the upgrades like the rigging and the lighting and the sound, we're going to have to make a few changes just to bring it up to state of the art on those counts.
I think about the Goshen Theater a lot because I saw a lot of movies growing up in here, and now they're being played on old-time movie channels and things. So Goshen Theater's got kind of a soft spot in my heart, Had a lot of good times in here.
I'm kind of partial because I know I explored every inch of this building when I was working here, and I love this building. I know I've been up in the attic out back and in the auditorium and way down in the sub-basements. I've been everywhere. It's just a terrific place. I love this place.
We have to restore it. There's almost nothing else that could do the things that the theater can do in terms of bringing the community together, and the historical aspects of the theater, I think, is also partly what brings the community together on this project, that we're keeping a piece of Goshen history.
After 100 years of operation, the building really needs a comprehensive overhaul. So our task is really taking this building from 1907 to 2017 and beyond. We're hoping that once again the theater can garner that kind of community will and support to making sure it's available for the next 100 years.